Okay, tonight we're going to learn all about shatnez. Now I know much more about shatnez than I did when we did in Nida. It's interesting. The Yerushalmi, as we will see, Pashtus argues on the Bavli in terms of shatnez. Okay, not yet. First, we're going to learn about some derabbanot. Habrasim, the bardasim, vadal mitikyun. These are all woolen garments. Minalos pinon, and the minalos pinon are shoes made out of wool. I think they're more like socks. Okay, because the b'nei they're like wool socks. You shouldn't wear them until you check them out to make sure there's no shatnez. However, Rabbi Yossi, when this afternoon that normally means it also here means however. And those which come from the seashore and from Chutz La'aretz, they don't have to be checked in the nation because the assumption is that even if they use some flax-like material, it's really hemp, and it's not going to be a shatnez. Umino shel zered, a shoe which is made primarily of leather doesn't have a problem of kilayim. According to the Stipler, it's because they only put wool padding inside of it. The Rambam says, since it's made, I don't know if the Rambam, but other Rishonim say that even if it has shatnez in it, it's hard shatnez. In other words, they don't make soft fabric to put into it, but rather hard fabric. And we learned before, that has to be something which provides some warmth and some protection to you. Whereas a hard fabric is just like walking on wood; it doesn't matter if it's shatnez or not.
It's hard fabric from the wool of sheep.
Hard fabric made from wool and sheep together, wool and linen together.
Not really, but I mean, it's the wool. It's not. We're talking about summer gmalim. It's not summer gmalim.
No, it's real wool. It's bona fide wool. Yeah. Okay. So in any event, so it's made. These minola don't have a problem with kilayim. Habur, this says more. Habur sin is barrier. That's what it is. Habar sin is dilma. Hadalmaki tuko adalmektikon. Kuvlin umaforin. These are all types of garments. Minola sapino dardasin. Now dardasin again are like sock-like shoes or sock-like foot coverings. Booties. Yeah, like booties. Yeah. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Afa boy michofa yam umdina siyam, that we use a quote on our Mishnah. Rabbi said also those which come, however, not those which come from the seashore and from Chutz La'aretz. Ma, how do we read that? Chofa yam umdina siyam, from the seashore, which is in Chutz La'aretz, and you need both conditions. Either or. Meaning either from the seashore or from the Chutz La'aretz. Or is referred specifically to the seashore which is in Chutz La'aretz. Okay, which one is it? So it says, we learn concerning this Brisa, which says we're talking about Tyre and its friends. Kesarin Mechover says Caesarea and its friends, meaning the suburbs around those areas. Hadar Marah, this teaches us that it's Michova Yam Shemedina Siyam, the seashore which is in Chutz La'aretz. I guess the old Caesarea was Chutz La'aretz. I don't know. Caesarea seems now to be in the middle of Israel, but I guess at the time it had a status of Chutz La'aretz. Unless there's another Kesarin. Says Laura, all these attempts only originally when linen was not so prevalent. And now the linen is very prevalent. You have to check no matter where you are, because who knows where the linen got introduced somehow. Mino shel zarav, there's a certain shoe which is called the Mino Shel Zarav. It's not the same one in our Mishnah. We had Zered. Here it says Zarav, but it could be it's the same thing. It's the same, some type of shoe. So be it as it may. So it says here, or booty or shoe. So there's a Is Asrin the Zarvin Imra. There are some places where they stitch wool go inside it. And then you have to check it out. Furthermore, in such a case, Rabbi Zira would command Rabbi Abba bar Zvina, I guess the student, that that Rabbi Bar Zvina should go tell Lebar Rishon, an individual called Bar Rishon, who's either the shoemaker or consumer of these shoes, he shouldn't tie his shoes with a linen shoelace. Rather with a he shouldn't sew the shoe with a linen lace, but rather with a leather lace. So in this case, since there was wool inside the shoe, so they have to make sure not to sew it with linen, because what? No, it was very in prevalence. Use cotton. Yeah, I think it was prohibitively expensive to process cotton in the old days for the cotton gin, so they didn't use it that frequently. So he says that therefore you shouldn't sew these shoes, since they have wool linings inside, with linen threads. You should rather use leather threads to sew them. Now, there's something not clear here. Something not clear, which is exactly what the configuration of the leather to the wool to the linen is, because you'll see here, although the way I've just translated it means that you're not supposed to sew your shoe with linen to say if it has a wool lining. There are others who learn this Gemara, and I'm not sure exactly how to work it in. There are others who learn this Gemara that's talking about if you wear a shoe which has a wool lining in it, you shouldn't wear a linen sock. Why? So there's a gzeira. It's a gzeira d'Rabbanan, obviously, because they're not sewn together. The gzeira d'Rabbanan is based on a premise. It's based on the premise that you can't remove the sock without removing the shoe. So therefore it looks like shatnez. The fact that the wool shoe encases the linen sock looks like shatnez. Okay? So gzeira d'Rabbanan. Is that clear? Let's see if we can fit that into the words. Let's go back a line. Minol Shel Zarav, this certain shoe, Isas, in a place of the Zarvin Imra Mingo, the place where they line it, they stitch it with wool inside. That Rabbi Zira, in this case, it was similar to that which Rabbi Zira said in Fakir, Rabbi Abar Zvina, he told Rabbi Zina, V'yomer Bar Rishon, to tell Bar Rishon, to leichot le misane bekiton, he shouldn't, well, it still doesn't work out. He shouldn't tie, I guess, he shouldn't tie his shoe, maybe it does. He shouldn't tie his shoe in that case with linen, but rather with leather. I guess what it means is like this in this case. What it means is that he had a shoe which had wool in it. Let's learn it's a booty. And it was like a wool booty. And he told him not to tie it with a linen cord. Because the linen cord which you would tie around the woolen booty would create shatnez d'Rabbanan, or it'd be a gzeira shatnez d'Rabbanan. This is similar for the next case, says the Gemara. Modi Rabbi Zira concedes Bahen in those individuals, the Oscar Piske the Amar, who tie a woolen gartel, a woolen belt, al the kita on their flat linen garments, do shari. That's okay. Do shonatz garmei, because then a person sucks in air, he contracts himself, dinachtale, and he can get out of the woolen garment, he can get out of the linen garment without untying the wool. So the parameter here, according to Rabbi Zira, is you have to be able, in order that you should be allowed to wear wool and linen at the same time, as separate garments, you have to be able to get out of the one garment without tying or untying the other one. So therefore, with a shoe, somehow in the shoelace configuration, you couldn't get off your wool sock unless you would untie the linen shoelaces. So therefore you weren't allowed to use the linen shoelaces. But
inside garment, though, not the outside.
Could be. But in this case over here, where your belt is a woolen belt and you're wearing linen clothing, if you suck in your air, you can just take your clothing off without removing the belt, and therefore it's mutter. Now the question, I'm not sure what we would do with our belts, because our belts go into loops. So you have to untie the belt. You can't just, make yourself, contract yourself and take off the clothing without taking the belt off, since it goes into loops which hold it in place. So I know Rabbi Zera hold in that case whether you would be allowed. Sounds like to me that in that case he would forbid you wearing linen pants with a woolen belt. Okay? That's right. But they're usually not Shabbos. It says we're Bon Kumi Rebbe. Kumi Rebbe Lo. The answer for Rebbe Lo, Mao Mechim Masane Bekiton. Can you wear a woolen belt with a leather garment? Amar Lo, so he said to them, here there's a tikkun from the Gra, Lama Lo. That's not in the Gemara, but it's supposed to be, why not? And Amru Lei is also not in the Gemara yet. Amru Lei, they said to him, and the next one instead of Kagon should be begin. Begin to Rabbi Zera. To Rabbi Zera, Amar Aser. May it's Aser, because Rabbi Zera said it's Aser. Be that as it may, Rabbi Law seems to argue on Rabbi Zera. But Moder Rabbi Ilah, who is Rabbi Law, Behan, by the way, in the Bavli his name is Ilah. Rabbi Ilah, it's in the Bavli. Behan, an individual with an Ayin Alf, yeah. Eloi, yeah. Moder Rabbi Eloi Behan, an individual, the Yalbish Dardasin Damar, who wants to wear woolen socks, Al Gabi Dardasin the Kitan, on top of linen socks, Shua Du Aser. That's for sure Aser. Why? The Lo Shalach Ilay, if he doesn't take off the upper one, Lo Shalach Are, he can't take off the lower one. Now, by that we mean, the way he learned the previous Gemara, the way the Stipler's son explains it, is that if you have an open sandal, and you're wearing a sock underneath it, so then there's mokum to be mako, because you can get the sock out by pulling it off through the open front without taking off the shoe. So it falls into the same category as the belt. Rabbi Zera nonetheless answered in that case tying the sandal with a linen shoelace. Rabbi Law argues on him in that case. Rabbi Law agrees, however, if you're putting two booties on top of each other, you can't take off one booty without taking off the other booty. So in that case, even Rabbi Law concedes that it's prohibited. Okay? Says the Gemara again, only Yisrael Rabbanan, because there's nothing to sew together, it's only Yisrael Rabbanan. Avoid Rabbi Safra, the far Rabbi Safra, Shol Rabbi Zera asked Rabbi Zera, Mao Mitam Pritin, it's permissible to put linen, go gulsa not linen, coins, go gulsa in a corner of one's woolen garment, umikrinim bechut v'kitan. But say I have my coins in my pocket over here, and that is a wool suit. Let's say, can I then take a linen thread and knot it around there? Or is that also part of this issue? Xerid Rabbanan. Again, nothing sewn. It's part of the Xerid Rabbanan. Mao mita, vice versa. Mao mita and pritin goes stine. Can one put coins inside one's linen garment, umikrinun, and tie them b'chut amar with a woolen tie? Amar lei. So Rav Sira responded to the father of Safra, Chachim Rebbe Ravuna? Did you, my master, did you ever meet Ravuna? Ravuna Amar also. Ravuna says this is forbidden. Rabbi Avina Amar also. Avina says also as well. Shmuel Amar Mutar. Shmuel says permitted. Rabbi Yaakov Barach B'Shem Rabbi Yasa Amar Mutar. Okay, so the question is whether this is part of the Xerid Rabbanan or not part of the Xerid Rabbanan.
Shmuel was in that document.
Yeah, right. So is Rabbi Avina. That's Ravina. The truth is, I take that back because this is earlier. This is not the same Ravina because this is the generation of Rabbi Zera. It was Rabbi Zera. So I don't know. Okay. Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah further. Obviously, the Yerushalmi was completed well before the Bavli, so it couldn't be the same person. Okay. Ein Osir Mishum Kilayim. Now here we have the very interesting Mishnah, the very basic Mishnah of Shatnez. Ein Osir Mishum Kilayim Ela Tovui Va'orik. The only thing which is also cause of Kilayim is that which is spun or woven. Shneimar, it says Lo Tubash Shatnez Davar Shu Shua Tovui Venus. Now, everybody goes to town. I looked in the article he did, has an outstanding explanation of this Mishnah here. You know, people like to malign article for good reason, but he did this. The Mishnayos is really great. They really did an outstanding job on the Mishnayos. So he has here. Shua Tavi News. Guess how he translates Shua Tavi News? He translated it as something which is Shua Tavi and News.
That's right.
And he says here, he has pages and pages and pages on it. He says that the term shatneh, shua, derives from a root meaning smooth, and refers to the process of hackling or combing the fibers prior to spinning. As for the other two terms, tavi refers to spinning, as is evident from Exodus. The meaning of nose, however, is not so clear. Rashi and Rashi understand nose to be synonymous with arug, and hence it refers to weaving. The Mishnah's opening remark that Kilayim must be spun and woven is thus based on the current analysis of the term shatnez as meaning combed, spun, and woven. For a fabric to count as shatnez according to Scripture, its manufacture must include these three stages. However, there's a disagreement. He goes on to define a long disagreement, which I'll summarize outside. Rashi holds that Shua Tavi News are combed, spun, and woven. Tosfos holds that Shua Tavi News means combed, spun, and twisted. And what word means woven? So it says, Lo Subash Shadnez Semor Pishtim Yachdov. Yachdov means woven. But according to Rashi and Tosfos, to have shatnez the right, so you need all three. And the simple assumption of that is that you have to take a thread of linen, you have to take linen and wool, comb them together, spin them together, and then knit with them together. All three stages. Mamish like the big dekun on the Beis HaMikdash, where they took different strands of material, spun them together into threads, and then wove with them. Right? That's what it has to be. Shua, Tavi, News, all three, either woven, spun and combed, and combed, spun and woven. The combed is the wool combed, spun is like on the spinning needle, like Rumpelstiltskin, and nose is woven according to Rashi. That's what woven means, and according to Tosfos, it means twisted. Right after the wool is spun, it's twisted.
What's the difference between weaving and twisting?
Twisting is to twist the threads. Weaving is to weave the threads into actual garments. Okay? According to Tosfos, the word Yachdav means that. But both according to Rashi and Tosfos, need all three to make the shatnez l'oraisa. The Rambam holds shatnez is any one of these three processes. Either shua, tavi, venuz. Not only that, he says shua means pressed, as in making the felt. Such as, a hat is made out of felt, right? So this is they just press the material in order to make this. That's also felt, right? The lining of the jacket, the basting. So I think it's called basting. Whatever it's called. So that's also felt. So that's pressed. Nose he learned is twining or spinning. Now, twining or sewing, excuse me. So the Ram holds any of these things done. Anything makes it d'oraisa. Now, the Pash Pshat in the Gemara Nida, which we learned at Daf Samachal a few days ago, is like Rashi. And the Pashim pointed out, like Rashi and Tosfos need all three. The Pash Pshat in the Yerushalmi here, we'll see, is going to be like the Rambam. And I think that this is in one of the many cases which the Rambam Pat's going to like the Yerushalmi over the Bavli. Here he says that you need either Shua, Tavi, Venuz, even though the Bavli seems to learn that all three are necessary in order to make shatnez d'oraisa. Okay?
Does the Rambam define what nose is?
Yeah. Twining or sewing. He brings it down here. As I said, he does a really excellent explanation here.
Twining means like Tosfos, or sewing like?
Yes, twining is like right, either or.
Sounds like twisting.
Yeah. It could be I just wrote it wrong. Could be that it says wrong. According to Rashi, it wouldn't be Nisa D'Oraisa. According to Rambam, it's Nisa D'Oraisa.
So how do we hold?
We're Machmir and everything. Any linen and wool.
That's the whole purpose of really checking for shotness anyway. Because if it's processed, you have all these different three stages.
Yeah. You can never have shotness D'Oraisa according to Rashi and Tosfos Manos. It would be impossible to find, right? Because they never take them together, right? Okay. All right. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Shimon Elazar Rabbi Shimon Elazar says, why is shotness called shotness? No lows. He is a scoffer who melis is Avisher Shmaim, and he scoffs at his Father in heaven who commanded him. Or no, he says here on the bottom, not a scoffer, rather he's a twisted person, distorted. He distorts that which his Father in heaven commanded him not to wear shotness. Halavadim Masurim. Now levadim, pressed felt, is also mipnei shein shuin, because that's shua. According to Rashi and Tosfos, means it's also the Rabbana. According to Rama, means it's also the Raisa. Piv shel tzemer, a border of wool, b'shel pishtan on a linen garment, also is forbidden because although they were not combed and spun together, they were woven together. I mean, they sewed the border onto the linen garment. So again, according to the Rambam, this would be the Raisa, right? According to the Rashi Tosfos, it would be the Rabbanan. They didn't just sew it on. Actually, well, I guess they did sew on. Looks, however, like they're woven together. Rabbi Yossi Omer Meshichos. Now here there's a typo. It should be Meshichos Sheba Shel Argama. That means strings of purple wool. Our garment is purple wool. Asurim are forbidden. They're not allowed to mean, they're not allowed to use them as belts, as a gartel. You connect them to the garment in some way before you tie them. I don't know if because through belt loops or because it's not clear exactly how you connect them, but they used to connect them to the garment before they tie them. So this is the Rabbanan of connecting wool to linen. You cannot, let's say you want to make a belt which has on one side wool and on the other side linen, and in the middle on both sides they don't connect, but you have leather on either side. Nonetheless, it's also because they're in the same belt together. Okay, this is the Rabbanan, not this is the Raisa. Okay. Even if there's a belt, there's leather between them. Embroidery, which either the weavers or the launderers put into your garment to recognize whose belongs to Asuras Mishum Kilayim, they're also because of Kilayim. Okay, so embroidery of one type and another type is going to be also as well. Okay, sometimes it's ornamental, sometimes it's functional, it's going to be also. Okay.
Even if you're using it for a handkerchief? So you have an embroidery?
No, it's not also about, no, it's only also if it's a shirt. Yeah. Ask the Gemara Nisnei Shaz. Now, these are all obvious questions. I'm not sure why these are all so significant. As for Nisnei Shaz, Lo Nisnei Tani, let it not say Shatnez, let's just say Shaz. Because Tani is obvious, because Tani means woven. Not woven. Spun. So isn't that obvious that you need to spin it? You have to weave it, comb it, and then weave it. So Tavi is obviously also. Says no. If you wouldn't have the middle letters, I would have said mutter, that it's mutter to spin the threads together. Our Mishnah tells us not that way. That it's only Asr Kilayim if it's Tavli. So we see that Tavli is Asr. Okay? It says the Gemara.
The assumption of this question here is that the word Shatnez really is an acronym.
Right.
As opposed to being a separate word, but it's just a Drushi kind of thing.
It's not just a Drushi thing, right? Really, which makes sense because the word Kilayim would have sufficed otherwise. The word shatnez, besides, it sounds so strange. It's not like any other Hebrew word, right? So it clearly seems to indicate that it's an acronym. What? Yeah, but not like that. Okay, one which has no etymology whatsoever, there's no shorish of any sort, But that's an Aramaic. Yigar Sadusa. Yeah, but that's Aramaic. That's a legitimate Aramaic word. This is not a legitimate Hebrew word. What would the root of shatnez be? That's the saying. It's a word which is more kav of three roots. Okay. Says the Gemara. So this is much more like the Rambam clearly, that the Torah is answering each step of the process. Nisnei shat lo nivnei nuz, Hiltina shav lo nivnei nuz. Avi Amina would have said, which is shat not nuz. Yisrael would have said that it knows the lamd is extraneous, that knows is mutter. Masis lo amra kei, and our Mishnah tells that that's not true. Elapiv shel tzemer, b'shel pishton. If you have a border of wool in a linen garment, that's also nation chosus loring because they make a together they comprise a woven entity. Nisnei tanaz, lo nisnei shah. Let's mention the last two, not the first one. Ilu tanina tanaz, velo tanina shah. Would have had just said tanaz and not shah. Having army, would have said shah mutter. That's mutter to comb them together. So masdis lo which means that to bring them together in a situation where they adhere to each other. And Mastis Lam Rakena, which doesn't say that Elavadi Nasoim Nation showing anything which is brought together in any way, shape, or form, even if it's just felt, that already makes it usher. We learned that the meshichos, the belts of purple wool are forbidden. So here's a typo also. It should be is tane asuros. Should say there's some who learn it's usher. Is tane mutaros, and there's some who learn it's mutar. Madam asuros he says it's also on ilay tarsayo. It's like the tarsi belts, that they make it very tight, so you can't remove your garment unless first you remove your belt. And before we had Xer, which said that if it's so tight that you can't remove your garment without removing the belt, then it's also be rabbanan to use a belt of linen with wool or vice versa. Madamar mutaros. He who says it's permissible to shanat karmevu nachtalo. He says it's all about a belt that you can contract yourself, squeeze yourself out of the belt, and hopefully your clothes will come off, despite the fact you're wearing this belt of this foreign material, as we learned earlier this evening. Okay, on we go. Last Mishnah, what is purported to be the hardest Masechta in Yerushalmi. It wasn't that bad, was it? It was pretty bad, right? Trofei was harder. Tamai was only for it. Trofei was not harder. Atokif tkifa achas. The Maya was immediately peaceful. The one with the little letters. Atokif tkifa achas. Somebody who makes one. Now, this is talking about sewing. If you put here's your garments. You put the thread through once, like that. That's not sewing. Doesn't create the issue of kilayim. So this is this. Let's say this is linen, and this is wool, and you connect them with one thread. That's not considered to be kilayim. They're not truly connected, right? Talking to even one time through Ein Chibur. Ein Chibur doesn't make them chumar. This linen is not mechuber. This wool vis-a-vis tuma. In other words, if this linen becomes tummy, this wool is not. Ve'em mishum kilayim. There's no place of kilayim. V'ashad Shabbos. If I remove the thread on Shabbos potter, I'm exempt. I didn't do anything d'oraisa. Also, shneicho shebetzad echad. What creates a chibur? If I put it through like that, like you, that's sewing. That's a stitch. This is not. Okay? Is that clear? So,
in this one, it's not. Is it on one level or is it interwoven? Like this is on top and the other is on the bottom. Like made an escargot.
I don't think it makes a difference. I don't think it's different. Yeah.
So they just slip out.
Right. It's not called truly sewn. Also, chibur that's connected via its connection vis-a-vis tuma. Now that's considered to be one garment. Mishum Kilayim is brown Kilayim. Lashon the Shabbos and Shabbos you're chayiv. You need 3, meaning you have to go. You get the idea. 1, 2, 3. Okay?
This is called a figure of 8 stitch in surgery.
No.
When you make
In surgery, you usually use single ones, don't you?
You can do double back.
You double back. Do you do stitches? No? Okay. Vashon the Shabbos chayiv either man to shalish. Hasakva kupa mitzvah l'chaim. Now nobody knows exactly what this line means, but the best pshat is the Rambam's pshat. I think the Rambam says if you put wool and linen and stuff them tightly into a sack, and then you want to wear the sack, it's kilayim, which makes sense because they check the padding in your shoulder pads, I believe, when they check for shatnez, because they're stuffed tightly together. So therefore there might be a problem with kilayim. I think that's why they check. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they check the material itself. But it's on the impression that they check if it's kilayim. Okay? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Chanina Amar Ad Yechus Kol Sitre. You know, when it says it says that it says that this is kilayim. I mean, this is a stitch. There can't be any string dangling down. It's got to be completely through. So I assume there's like a knot at the end, although we're going to discuss whether that's true. But there can't be any stuff dangling, because that's not considered to be a bona fide stitch at that point. It's got to be completely through, all the way through. Says more Amar Rabbi Yana Rabbi said Amar Lulu Rabbi Chaim. They said to Rabbi Chaim, "Say Ukroaki Seichtin. Go and read our Mishnah. V'atina that we learn Osir Shnei Roshel Tzad Echad. As long as you went through and through again, it doesn't matter. Me'atad Yechus v'Yesuk. According to you have to pull it tight. You have to pull it tight. Would really mean, how do you pull it tight? There's only one way to pull it tight, by going again in. Right? Only then could you pull this end tight and not leave something hanging out. So that's it. The 2 becomes 3, and the 3 will become 4. If you want to make it tight over here. How is it shaykh such a thing, right? It's got to go back in again. For a time, Rabbi said 3 times. He also would have to go back in again. No, you're wrong. It's like 1 in and 1 out, here and here. And even if they're dangling, it's still considered to be a proper stitch. If you have a thread which is in the eye of a needle, even if it's sewn, so it can't come out of the needle, the eye of the needle, until it's snapped. Eno chibur, and here's a typo. It should be eno chibur, period. It's not a chibur, it's not connected to the needle. In other words, if the needle becomes tamei, the thread does not become tamei. They're considered 2 distinct things, and one keli is never matame another keli, except when there's mashkin between the 2 of them. But normally a keli is not matame another keli. However, here the Gra throws in a word, tafra lebeged. Once you've sewn the needle into the garment, hachud chibur lebeged, then the needle, the thread is connected to the garment. Ve'eno chibur lemachet. Again, it's not connected to the needle. Rabbi Yoda, Rabbi Yosef, they both said because shemikana mikan. That which we said that over here it's considered sewn. That this is a stitch. It's only if you have a knot over here and a knot over here. You got to knot it so it doesn't slip out, because otherwise it's just going to slip. Says the Gemara, Milein the Rabbanan Pligan. That's nice, but the rabbis argue. Dom Rabbi Bar B'Yir M'Shem Rab Hamam Tiach Tzadim B'Shabbos Chai Mishum Toper. If I take this configuration and let's say it's loose, and I tighten it on Shabbos, I'm chai because of Teifer. So if I have a loose seam, and I tighten it on Shabbos, I'm chai because of Teifer. Now, if you have to make knots in it in order to make it bonafide Teifer, so then v'yemar mishum Teifer mishum kosher. Let's say I'm chai because of both tying and knotting. It doesn't say that. It must be that I don't have to knot in order to be chai because of sewing. Okay, so even if I just pull these tight without knotting it, that's enough to be chai on Shabbos. Okay?
The last act of
not by Topher.
Right away.
Smakim Padish, yeah. Why is Smakim Padish? It can come loose again. Because it was got loose in the first place. The seam, you're not completing the seam now. The seam got loose again. Only if you actually, what happens like this, it's not Smakim Padish for two reasons. First of all, Smakim Padish is the first time somebody completed the garment. If the seam comes loose in the garment later on, and you re-tie it, that's how called Smakim Padish. So I said, in order to be Smakim Padish, you have the taka be complete. If there's a capacity to frequently come loose again, so that's not considered complete. It's not permanent, I should say. It's be complete and permanent, and that wouldn't be in this case. Yeah, but Misaka we only say when we have nothing else we can put it into. So we didn't put in the category of Topher, said which is a Misaka. Okay, Rabbi Simon said, time of the Rabbi Yehuda. The large Rabbi say need 3. 1, 2, 3. It's because when you do 3 times, it stays in place, even without a knot. It's fixed. Ask more. What are you saying, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Eliezer? Is Rabbi Yehuda like Rabbi Eliezer? The Tzina, the one we learned over there. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. In order to be Yerushalmi Kilayim, you have to orek shlosha chotim b'tchila. You have to weave 3 threads, or v'achas al orek. If you already had woven 3 threads and you add another one, you're chayav. So we see he also requires 3. Rabbi Eliezer said not necessarily. Time Rabbi Eliezer tamon aydei shlishim melachim miskayemes. There, the reason Rabbi Eliezer required a 3rd one is because only by a 3rd one will the weave maintain itself. No, it's because that's a weave. So when you make a weave, you need 3 layers in order to make it permanent. But here, pachas mikan, even if it's less, even perhaps if it's 2, it is a type which should be low mistater. It's not going to get ruined. Okay, so there, Rabbi Eliezer might require a weave of 3. But over here, it wouldn't require a stitch of 3. A stitch or 2 would be sufficient to keep it intact. Okay? Says Rabbi Simon B'Shem Levi said, Lo shano elasak. That which you said in our Mishnah. Again, according to Rambam, that you throw a whole bunch of linen and wool into a sack and becomes also to wear that sack because of kilayim. That's only a sack. And I think it's a sack because it's soft and it's malleable and becomes like a garment when you wear it. However, hasal, if it's a basket which is stiff and the wool and linen don't mix together and could form a garment through their combination in the sack, it's not a problem. Ashkachtani, however, that's a nice svore, but we found that it's wrong. Hasal v'asak v'akupa, baskets and sacks and other kinds of baskets, mitzarfim mikilayim, they join whatever's within into kilayim. But here's a great answer, guys. You could sit in a kilayim tent. Wasn't that a great answer? Even though it protects you.
It's not touching you.
Right. Yeah.
What happens if it's not?
It doesn't matter as long as you're not wearing it. That's not considered derech levisha. Rabbi Yehuda boy, who know ma'ushay tzarfa b'kilayim? Can you join up with your son to make kilayim? So what does he mean by that? Said, hey Chavida, what are we talking about? Who lavishmani damar rei lavishmani the kitan? He's wearing linen garments, wool garments. Son's wearing linen garments. How could that be? Nasav So it says where. Oh no, it's not a kasha. It's a statement. Well, hey Chavira, what? No, they're wearing a belt together. Hey Chavira, who lavish minded Amar? He's wearing woolen garments. Uvrei lavish minded Gitan's son's wearing linen garments. Nasa piske da Amar, and they take a wool belt. Va'agla tarvayin, and they encircle both of them. Because they can't get out of it, one without the other. It's not like I said before, we can easily flip out on your own. So therefore, that's Kilayim Rabbanan. Rabbi Yossi.
Sack race or something.
What?
Three-legged race.
Rabbi Yossi, it said, Vahain no noshus. That case is not tight. In other words, it says Rabbi Yossi has to be very tight in order for it to be, in order to make it kilayim, which means either the belt has to be very, very tight so it can't loosen at all, or it has to be, of course, that they sew it together, which is also nashuch, right? It's called nashuch, biting, because it's sewn together. Okay? Rabbi Chaga boy, who atzmo maushi itztarip kilayim? What about he himself can be mitztarip to kilayim? What does it mean? Kigo hechavira, who, what a case we're talking about? Lavish dardasin, the imar b'chad raglaya, he's wearing woolen socks at one foot, the dardasin, the kitam b'chad raglaya, and a linen sock on the other foot. It's an idiot, right? I couldn't see it when he took the socks. It's not. They're still not connected, right? So why is it? Why is it?
That's a moneymaker, then.
Oh, before we start, I need a bracha this night, which has a hadron. This one has no hadron. By the way, you should note that this is a milestone in a couple of ways. First of all, it's by the alleged artist Masechet Yerushalmi, and also we're finishing the first volume of the Yerushalmi Shas, which means we only have 6 more to go. So, I managed to get this one quite beat up with the help of Dr. Spindel. We're planning to see him, which is in about 3.5 years, and it's going to be.
United That's offered 8,000 Gerach Hasid. It'll come out.
Anything to see.
Reinsdorf's Jewish. He wouldn't mind.
Is it in there? Okay. So the last Mishnah Kilayim talks about what's necessary in order to make Kilayim D'Oraisa and the Rabbanan Shatnez, D'Oraisa and the Rabbanan, in terms of the sewing. Well, actually, I shouldn't say D'Oraisa and the Rabbanan, because we had a big machlokas in this Mishnah before. According to Rashi and Tosfos, no Shatnez in our day and age is the D'Oraisa, because Rashi and Tosfos hold that in order to have Shatnez D'Oraisa, it has to be that the linen and the wool are combed together and then spun together into threads and then woven into a garment together. It's not just enough to sew a linen thread into a woolen garment. That's not sufficient. That the Rambam holds that that's a Shatnez D'Oraisa, that any of these things, if you have wool and linen combed together or pressed together into a felt, or you have linen and wool which are spun together in thread, or you have linen and wool which are woven together, any of those are D'Oraisa. But the Rashi and Tosfos holds that has to be all three. So that which we have Shatnez D'Oraisa, and we may be D'Oraisa is only according to the Rambam, not going to Rashi and Tosfos. And in fact, this seems to be machlokas between the Yerushalmi and Bavli, as I said before. The Yerushalmi seems to hold that like the Rambam, and the Bavli seems to hold like the Rashi and Tosfos. As made the last Mishnah discusses what kind of stitch you need in order to make Shatnez. Is it a stitch which just goes one, that this is a wool garment, that this is a linen garment, stitch which just goes once through and connects the two? And according to Rashi, it's the Rabbanan, but according to Tosfos, according to Rambam, may be D'Oraisa. According to so everyone agrees this is not. Tanakama holds when it goes through twice, but you go through and come back like a U. And Rabbi Yehuda holds it has to go through and come back again, like a double U. but a different kind of W than we have. Now, the thing is like this. Then the Gemara goes through all sorts of takonos d'Rabbanan, such as if you have a very tight belt of linen, you can't put the very tight belt of linen around your woolen garment and vice versa, unless there's ways you can slip out of it. But then the Gemara goes to a couple of wild cases, says, well, what about this case? What about this case? And the Gemara says each one of these cases, it's not noshuch. In other words, there has to be, even to be also the Rabbanan, there has to be a tight connection, a binding relationship between the wool and the linen. So therefore, the Yerushalmi ends up with the following case. So it says, lo tzurcha to lo. So those issues are not necessary to ask. But let's talk about the following issue. Hayu berishon patzios. You have on 1 foot, or it's not clear exactly what it means by rishon here, but you had here wounds. Yoiv siplanei the smartuta amar, and you put a bandage made out of a rag of wool al chada, the siplanei the smartuta kitan, and you put a bandage of a rag of linen al chada on the other one. Is that considered to be a connection? Now, this is I assume that they're close to each other, and since you're going to keep the bandages there, so therefore it's perhaps should be considered to be a form of shatnez d'Rabbanan. So says Gemara, Ham Rabbi Yossi v'ain no noshuch. That case is also ein no in the Yerushalmi is a contraction for the word eino. It's not; they're not biting each other. And the only time it's osir is when it's nasha, when it's biting each other. Just in brief, a little vort. The Michtam Elio says that shatnez, he brings down that from the Radbaz, that shatnez means a satan az, a very bitter, devilish kind of mixture. And the reason why this is so explains Michtam Elio, says that the linen represents din, pishton represents din, and wool represents rachamim, chesed. And he brings rayas for that. How we know that linen represents din and wool represents chesed. One is chesed, one is din. And the only way, one has to be very careful when one deals with chesed and din, or chesed and gevura, to be more precise. He says, generally speaking, chesed, gevura is very good when you use it on yourself. But when you use it against others, it's very, very bad. And that's, of course, the midah of Esav. His gevura was directed towards others. The midah of Yitzchak was gevura inner directed. Ezu gibar kovish is Yitzro. Chesed is the exact opposite. Chesed is very good when you use it towards others, but it's very bad when you use it towards yourself because you indulge yourself. And the midah of chesed towards others is Avraham, and the midah of chesed towards oneself is, of course, Yishmael, who is a very lustful individual. So that's the chesed and gevura are antithetical. One should be outer directed, one should be inner directed. The worst thing one can do is to have both chesed and gevura direct in the wrong directions. That's shatnez. One has chesed for oneself and gevura for others. That's terrible. So therefore, that's the danger of shatnez, that one takes midos and mixes and matches them in the wrong way, in an improper fashion. Therefore, the Torah is telling us this in the prohibition on mixing shatnez, wool, and linen together. There are times when wool and linen is supposed to be mixed together. When are wool and linen supposed to be mixed together? Big day kuhuna, or by tzitzis. In the service of a mitzvah, then one knows the proper way to make use of chesed and gevura and combine them in a way which is going to be chesed out directed and gevura inner directed. And then he goes into a discussion of Cain and Hevel, where of course Cain brought flax, brings down, they brought from his pishton as a korban, and Hevel brought from wool, from the sheep as his korban. and he says how it goes into how each one manifested the midah kind of gvura, hevel of chesed, and how that their first combination didn't work out well. That's why there had to be the Isser of Shatnez in order to know that one has to be very careful when bringing these traits together. They can be very volatile, and one can only use them in the proper service.
So why would someone be allowed to mix wool and linen like we call it Shabbos for a suit then, if you were doing it for a mitzvah?
That's a good question. The Torah didn't answer it in the Torah didn't make it mutter for the Torah only made it mutter where there's no alternative. I'm not sure how to say that clearly, but in other words, the Torah said in a case where we want to demonstrate to you. Well, let me clarify it better. In a case where tchelas is essential. In other words, the component which is essential is where there's a mitzvah to wear tchelas. Right? So there, the tchelas must come together with the linen. There's a mitzvah in the linen and a mitzvah in the wool. And then the one is allowed to combine the two. But if you just want to take shatnez, where there's no mitzvah to wear any component thereof, it's just for your own convenience, then that's forbidden. But the truth is, I don't know if that answers your question well. Obviously, the bottom line is that this is a chok. Shatnez is one of the greatest chukim in the Torah. And of course, even chukim have logics, they have understandings. But ultimately, what?
And exceptions,
right? So ultimately, if we can't, we won't be able, unless we are very big chachamim, which none of us are. Then we were not able to define exactly to what extent kilayim is kilayim, what extent it's not. Hadrolach Meseches Kilayim V'Adrocholon. Dadlon says Kilayim V'Datocholon. Lo Yisnashim Noch Meseches Kilayim V'Lo Tisnashim Minon. Lo Ba'amadev Lo Amadasi. Hadrolach says Kilayim V'Adrocholon. Dadlon Meseches Kilayim V'Datocholon. Lo Yisnashim Noch Meseches Kilayim V'Lo Tisnashim Minon. Lo Ba'amadev Lo Amadasi. Hadrolach Meseches Kilayim V'Adrocholon. Dadlon Meseches Kilayim V'Datocholon. Lo Yisnashim Noch Meseches Kilayim V'Lo Tisnashim Minon. Lo Ba'amadev Lo Amadasi. Yotzam Fanecha Nelohinu Ve'Avosenu Sheteit So Schomen Osir B'Lam B'Zeu Sei Mono L'Olam Haba Chanina Bar Papa Rami Bar Papa Nachmar Papa Achoy Bar Papa Amamari Bar Papa Rafar Papa Rochish Bar Papa Surcha Bar Papa Ada Bar Papa Dor Bar Papa Hari Avanoa Adonai Luetz Devei So Schol Finu V'Fios Amcha Beis Yisrael V'Yeh Kulanu Anachlu V'Tzetzoyinu V'Tzetzoyit Tzetzoyinu Tzetzoyim Amcha Beis Yisrael Kloni Odei Shmechel V'Odei Sosechel Yishma Me'evat Chachmenim B'Tzosechel Ki Yolam Hili Hili B'Ta Tamim Chukech L'man Lo Evosh Lom Lo Shkach P'Kudecho Ki Vom Chisani Brucha Torah Lamdeni Chukecho Amen 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 Sela V'Ed Modim Anachlu V'Necho Anelu Hinu V'Hei Avosenu Shesamta Chokeni Mil Shebeis Hamedosh V'Lo Samta Chokeni Mil Shvei Konos Shonu Mashkimim V'Hem Mashkimim Onu Mashkimim D'Vei Tov V'Hem Mashkimim D'Volim B'Telim Onu Melim V'Hem Amelim Onu Melim Kal Misachar V'Hem Melim V'Enem Kal Misachar Onu Rotzim V'Hem Rotzim Onu Rotzim L'Chei Olam Haba V'Hem Rotzim V'Ershachas Shneim V'Atolu Him Teredeim V'Ershachas Ad She'idomi Mirma Liechzu Mirem V'Ani Eftach Boch Yirtzov V'Necha Nelohenu K'Shem Shaz Adonu Sayim Meseches Kilayim Kei Tazreinu L'Aschil Mesechtus Usforim Acherim L'Saimam Lilmod U'Lamed Lishmor V'Lasos U'Lekayim Es Kol Divrei Samuta Osecha B'Yavo Schuz Kot HaNo'anoim V'Amoroim V'Talmidei Chachamim Yamulonu L'Zareinu Shlotomu Shator Mipinu B'Zareinu V'Zera Zareinu Ad Olam V'Tizkayim Bonu B'Salecha Tanche Oscha B'Shoch B'Cha Tishmor Lecha V'Akitzosa His Sichecha Kivriya Yirvu Yamecha V'Sifl Choshnos Chaim Orchimim B'Yimino B'Smola Osher V'Chavod Adonai Os Lamo Yitzen Noi V'Rech Samo V'Shalom Yiskadash Merabah V'Amadu Asid L'Yitzchados L'Chayim Messiah Asok Yeson Chayam Ol Mivnei Katod Yerushalmi Ushach L'Loich L'Ei B'Kava U'Merkal Pochon L'Chom Minara U'Lasov Pochon L'Ishmael L'Asrei V'Yamlich K'Shavrichu V'Machusei V'Yikarei B'Chai L'Chom V'Yamachon V'Chai L'Chol Beis Yisrael V'Agolov Yizman Korivim U'Amei Shmer Rabba mevarach li'olam umei Omer Yisbach v'ishtabach v'isbach v'salman v'istasei v'yisador v'yisalev v'yisalo shmei d'kutra b'chicho le'lo mincha b'chosav v'shirasat v'shbchasav v'nachmasav ta'miram b'yomar v'imurmei ha'yisov v'amram v'atabneim v'kol tamnei samadeyam v'akol mandas kim ha'raisa divasro adem l'imchol asar v'asar ye'en l'honu chon shlam ha'rab l'china v'chis v'achamin v'chayina l'china v'zonei v'chei v'vokram migram avodim shmayo v'yarav v'imurmei ye'esh l'honu Rabbi Mishamayo v'chaim olinu v'akol Yisrael v'imurmei Oseh Shalom Miramav v'yaseh Shalom olinu v'akol Yisrael v'imurmei Shkoyach